If you're a recent graduate or maybe even still in the medical school, your chances of match actually improve quite a bit. You have some advantages over other applicants. And let's see how our speakers talk about it. They're giving you kind of a roadmap that you can follow and increase your chances of match.
Over to Anchat. He's a recent graduate. He had a number of interviews. So now let's get the different perspective on how recent graduates who have a lot of interviews, how should they play this? So,
Hey guys,
Anchat, your PS,
yeah,
CV, everything, tell us
yeah.
the secret sauce.
So hey guys, so welcome to Sarthi group, and so I'm going to give you a very different perspective of how you can approach the match. So my story is just couple of minutes regarding my story. So one fine day, I got into medical school, and I'm having lunch with my dad, and he says that, okay, kid, you got into medical school. What now? And he said to me that, okay, you know, right, that medical and just doing medical school in India doesn't mean anything. So we were like, okay, so let's come up with the post medical school plan. And uh, one of the plans I came up was USMLE. I just said that, okay, let me look about USMLE process, and let me get back to you. So then I read about USMLE, and you always start with the exams. So I'm into like 9 months of my medical school, and I started preparing. I started doing UWorld, and people were saying do K-plan and all that. So 3 months, my first year went by, and I gave that first NBME. And I remember I got like 40 points, which is like less than 125 in your actual exam. So then and most of the questions I didn't even understand because it was all clinical and all that. So I gave up the idea to, take the exam in my second year, which was originally the plan. So then I talked to my seniors. I went on forums, especially Facebook and USMLE forums, what other people think about this process. So some of the suggestions were, and as a medical school in like starting of your second year, I didn't even know what specialty I'm going to pursue. So I was looking at surgery, I was looking at internal medicine and all that. So some of the common themes that came up were like U.S. clinical experience, strong letter of recommendations, and in second year you don't have any clinical experience. So how can you actually apply for those positions? So what I did was I wanted to do surgery back in second year. So what I did was that I came up with this idea that I would do anesthesiology, so I am exposed to all the surgeries that are happening. And then when I was contacting programs through emails, I got to know that some of the other things like researches and research and volunteer experience, clinical experience, they also come into play. So now I'm in my second year of medical school, and I am applying, and I'm failing at applying all these clinical experiences. So I reached out to as many people as I can. I used my dad's contacts because I come from a medical family. So how I dealt with, I targeted observerships so that I can say that at least I'm in the system. So as you know, in India, as a boy, you can either do general surgery or you can do internal medicine. So those two specialties I focused on, and I applied for observerships in those specialties. So now you might ask me that in second year, how did you manage? So medical school, so after my medical school, my classes, I used to research about all these observerships, and back then I knew about research, so I contacted my medical school principal investigators what opportunities are out there and all that. And in my classes, I used to sleep. So I used to sleep, or I used to do observership research, and I won't like recommend this strategy, but I thank my teachers to let me give them grief about that. They either told me to get out of the class, or just they let me sleep in their classes. So after my classes, 3 things I focused on. I focused on getting at least observerships in my second year, research, and third thing was to get something out of the research. So so now I will tell you how to actually pursue your interest, because people might say that, okay, you want to do internal medicine, so do you decide when you are in utero that you want to do internal medicine? No. You, as a medical student, you have to explore your interests, and don't be afraid to explore internal medicine, family medicine, general surgery, OBGYN, pathology. So what I did was, in my second year, you know that I have done anesthesiology, I have some exposure to surgery, I have this nephrology observership. And then I was really curious because my dad is a pulmonologist, and in India they call it TB and chest. So I was really intrigued by TB, that TB could be a specialty. So I contacted my pulmonologist PI, and they gave me opportunity to work with their team. And I got something out of those research, and it is very important to produce from those experiences. So when I was like telling about my research experience, that column which says publications was an empty. So that, and I wasn't ever afraid to follow my interest. So in my third year, when in my community medicine, I got interested in abuse. So I followed that interest, and I talked to my community medicine director to let me do this research project on male abuse. So Indian husbands would be very delighted to know that verbal abuse is really common, and they get really affected by females and their wives verbally abusing them. So the incidence is common, and the effect is also common. So anyways, so I have these different researches, I have these different observerships, and then in my third year, I just focused on getting electives. And back in 2013-14, it was not that difficult to go for electives. The only thing was that I had to plan 9 months ahead. So I applied 9 months ahead, and it was like all the paperwork was done, and I went into those electives. And as an average student, I did on those, but I made sure that I at least have those electives. And then in my fourth year, I really enjoyed internal medicine. I wasn't afraid of like applying only to internal medicine and all that. But so I imagined that if I went to the program director to let me give that internal medicine residency, so what would I say? So after medical school, I decided to stay back in India and do this medical JR-ship for a year so that I explore my interest in internal medicine. So after I got a couple of patients, interesting patients, I was really sure that I wanted to do internal medicine. And then time of application came by. And so now I see all those experiences in community medicine, like leprosy, talking to teenagers about safe sexual practices, about water contamination and all that. So I was delighted to see that volunteer experience on the ES application. So I jot all that down, and I did my experience, like the work experience. So I used that those rotations, those electives, those internal medicine, medical JR shifts. So if you can see the theme, I have already answered 3 major questions for the program director already. I have shown commitment to United States by starting off early. I have showed commitment to medicine by getting involved into all these different types of experiences, and then specifically internal medicine, I have showed my commitment to. The only 3 questions that remained were why this program in particular, so what are your future plans? Okay, kid, you have done all these electives, rotations, and everything you have published, but what do you want to do in the future? So I wasn't throwing words at them. I was like saying that I have this primary care experience back in India, because after your MBBS you can actually practice as a primary care physician. So I showed them that I have already done that in India, and that's why I'm interested in practicing as a primary care physician, for example. And also, like, I didn't say that that is set in stone. I also said that this is one of the interests, but I have done these electives in pulmonary critical care, so I might also pursue the road of fellowship. So that was it. And then why this program? I did my research regarding the programs when I was applying, and I think that was it. But the only thing with this is that you need a little birdie sitting on your left or right shoulder saying you do this, do that. That could be your senior, that could be USMLESarthi, and these people that really tell you what to do at right time, because exploring your interests sounds really fun, but you also need to follow those timelines. So these were it, but these were some of the do's, but I also want to cover don'ts. So some of the things that really bother me are when I see people and hear people saying that your medical school experience doesn't count, your home research doesn't count. So these are the things that really bother me, because 90% of my interviews were basically on my medical JR sheet actually, and some of them were based on my home research. For example, the tuberculosis paper that I wrote and the medical JR sheet. So this is one of the myths that I want you guys to not worry about. And then I think one of the things that are really important is that you want to make sure that you articulate yourself well. So in that scenario, you want to practice your interview skills, and that could be with your seniors, USMLESarthi, or anybody. So these are some of the things, and I would leave you guys with 3 thoughts that you have to become like chocolate ice cream, so that you are tasty enough for enough people. Like, you don't have to be tasty for everybody. You have to be so that enough people want you. And second is, don't worry about internal medicine or surgery in your medical school, because as a medical student, it is your right to explore all your interests. Like, you can do as much you can. In those 5.5 years, you have the most liberty to explore those interests. So be brave and explore those. And then third thing is, just have faith in something, like faith in your efforts, faith in your dreams, faith in your interests. So have faith in those things, because this is a very tedious process. I mean, not tedious, it's a very long process. So if you have faith, that would really help you to cross that bridge. So this was my story in a nutshell, and yeah, so have that birdie, plan ahead. Another thing I would say that if you can, especially for USMLEs, if you can find a study partner that has the same wavelength as yours, that would be really helpful, especially for newer students. Um,